Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises to manage clients and projects with max efficiency, sharing Wix's SEO tech to help you drive growth.
Fix errors, waste, and issues in a couple of clicks. Get alerted whenever you're off track. Sign up at trueclicks.com.
Welcome to the Optimist Room. Lots of stuff about Google search quality, large language models, SGE. It's all a little bit depressing, isn't it? I believe that for most people in this room, most big websites, organic search still the biggest channel. Still your biggest channel, particularly for new user acquisition, new customers, and so forth. Still the biggest opportunity, largely because biggest channel. But for almost all of us, it's still our least understood channel. And that's not criticizing you all, you're all professionals. I've been in the industry for 20 years, nearly, and I still feel like I'm trying to figure out what's going on and guessing half the time. That's why we're running all these tests. And this is why, thank you for the intro, at SearchPilot, we spend our lives making graphs look like this. That's the plan, at least. So what we're trying to do is add a bit of science, be able to say this specific on-site change resulted in this business outcome with some kind of confidence interval on it. This is the SEO's view. And I imagine most folks here are practitioners, right? Actually hands-on in the SEO world. This is the kind of stuff that you would be looking at. But I'm increasingly feeling like our job is actually more about things that look like this, more like the dashboard level view. More like the boss or the boss's boss's view is we have a sequence of things. We have a whole backlog. We've got a whole bunch of plans. We're running all these different initiatives, different experiments, and we're getting these business outcomes that go with them. And obviously, sometimes they go the way you want, sometimes they don't. If they all were green, you wouldn't need to test them. So we get the inconclusive, we get the positive, we get the negative. But it's the dashboard level stuff that is what I'm kind of most excited about. And what we're talking about here, just very briefly to set the scene, because we're going to spend most of today on googlebot and Search Console. But just to set the scene so you understand what I'm talking about, because it all ties into the kind of tests that we're running. When I talk about SEO tests, I'm talking about having a hypothesis, adding pricing to the page title, for example, or on-page stuff, updating the header, title tag, related links, anything on site, essentially, and then running a controlled A/B test. And you've probably heard of A/B tests in the context of conversion rate testing, right? Folks have probably heard of all the software that runs conversion rate A/B tests. In those cases, if you're running on a particular page, you have two versions of that page, right? The A and the B. And this is a very simplified version. You show half the audience the A and half the audience the B of the same page. And you see what happens to the conversion rate of the two sections of your audience. If you try to do that for SEO testing, you're going to run into a few problems. It's going to be some combination of cloaking, duplicate content, or just invisible to Google. Because Googlebot is essentially like one visitor to your website. So you have to put them in either the A bucket or the B bucket. Wouldn't work. So what we do is we run on very large websites, and not everybody here probably works only on huge websites. We've probably got some in-house folks from smaller places. We've got some agencies that have smaller clients. That's fine. Our kinds of tests really only work on large websites. But that's why we publish a lot of the test results. And we have a newsletter. If you're interested, we publish a new test result every couple of weeks. And that could be straight to your inbox. And it's basically we're trying to produce the content that I wish had always existed when I was a consultant, of these real experiments, the results of them, and the outcomes. So the way it works when you run an SEO test, like the kind that I'm talking about, is you run on a site section, so a group of similar pages, and some of the pages are in one group, one bucket, and some of the pages are in the other bucket. So every single page is either a control page or a variant page. So we're applying these changes to only the variant pages in this situation, and then running a bunch of statistics and mathematical analysis to figure out the chart that I showed you earlier. If you want to know more about this, this is not the topic really of today's talk. It's just a bit of background that you need to understand the bits I'm going to go into on the Googlebot and Search Console. If you want more on this, head on over to searchpilot.com. There's millions of resources on that. it's very important as you do this that you randomize which pages go in which bucket, right? Which are A pages, which are B pages, which are control and which are variant. This is a big part of what we spend our time doing. Also not the subject of today's talk. So again, if you want to know more about bucketing, go and head on over and learn more about that. What is relevant to today's talk is the other part of the analysis. So we've made the change. We decided on the change. We've got the hypothesis. We've picked the pages we're going to apply it to. And then we have to do that analysis step to apply statistical methods to figure out what happened. Was it a good idea? What's the confidence band on the uplift? And this is an area that is one of the most critical KPIs that we have, is how good are we at detecting uplifts? How small an uplift can we detect with statistical confidence? And you've probably come across this free and open source tools. Causal impact is the kind of thing you might have heard of as a tool for doing this kind of stuff. We've been working to try and get better than that. And so our original best model on our test bed data was getting about 13% of tests we could detect the uplift on. That was already twice as good as causal impact. And we've been making some nice wins. And our latest model is up to over 25%, twice as good as our previous best model, which was twice as good as causal impact. The reason for bringing this up is, as I said, this is one of our big KPIs. So the two kind of things we really pay attention to is test cadence. How many tests can you run per month or per quarter? And what's the win rate? Like how often can we detect a winner? Those are the big things that you want to, if you're building an experimentation program, those are going to be core KPIs for you. And so the first part of today's talk is about googlebot data and how it helps with this, or at least that's what we were hoping to do. Can we improve our test analysis with googlebot crawl data? What this basically boils down to is the question, has Google seen the changes we made? Right? It sounds simple, but we've just taken these variant pages and made this change. We can only possibly see a result of that once Google has recrawled those pages. Until it's recrawled those pages, there's going to be nothing to see. So this is the question we're trying to answer. Have our variant pages been recrawled since we launched the test? And in our analysis, it looks a little bit like this. I'm going to just run through a quick video that shows my thinking on this. So I think I need to press again. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So what we're seeing here is the percentage of sessions crawled by Googlebot. This is, I think, the most important metric for this, but it takes a little moment to get your head around. So what we're seeing here is that this is going from just under 75% to 97-ish% over here. And this is what percentage of all organic visitors to this site section are landing on pages that by this point Google has recrawled. Okay? And we can see it. So the purple line is the variant pages, the blue line is the control pages, so we can check that they're getting kind of crawled in sync with one another. There's other bits and pieces that might be interesting. It relates, this is a slightly easier to understand, but I think less helpful metric, which is the raw percentage of pages crawled by Googlebot. And you can see these numbers are much lower. This starts at like 25% and rises only to 3/4 by the end of it. So what's going on here is essentially it's a long tail effect. When you think of any group of pages on your website, talk about this in a second. When you think of any group of pages on your website, some of them are going to be much, much more highly trafficked than others. And those are much more important, right? You're kind of highly visible pages that are getting a ton of traffic. And so we care disproportionately much whether those pages have been recrawled. So that's why this key metric is sessions recrawled. Slightly counterintuitive, takes a moment to get your head around. But essentially, imagine a site section where 90% of the traffic goes to half the pages. By the time those 50% of pages have been recrawled, 90% of your organic traffic is landing on pages that have been recrawled. And I think that's the kind of key metric that we're paying attention to here. This is just showing that you can dig into the details. I know everybody loves the CSV, so we dive into those kind of things. But we saw something a little bit surprising as we did this work. So what we thought we were going to do was run better analysis and be able to detect small uplifts with more confidence. It turns out that the KPI this actually ends up hitting is the other one, test speed. And as I said, this is the kind of metric that like the executives care about when you're running an experimentation program. You're going to be asked, how many tests are we running? That's going to be like, because that's the thing you can control. You can't control which ones win. If you knew which ones were going to win, you wouldn't have to run the tests in the first place. But you can control how fast you push these tests out there. So let's talk about this a little bit. So on this chart, we thought that what we were going to do was say, okay, on day one, less than half the pages have been recrawled. So less than half of the effect can possibly be visible by this point. A couple of days later, we're up to like 75% of the effect could be visible. And by this point, we're at like 90% of the effect could be visible. And we thought if we feed this into the model, we'll get better statistical analysis, we'll narrow those confidence intervals, we'll be better at detecting uplifts. So far, we have not had too much of a breakthrough in this area. We're still doing some R&D on it. This might change. Watch this space. I might give another talk next week on next year, on breakthroughs we've made in this area. But so far, this hasn't been the big win. What's been the big win is realizing that this 90% number, which isn't a magic number, but is 90% of sessions are now landing on pages that have been recrawled since we launched the experiment, happens way sooner than we thought it would. This is 4 days on this particular example. Sometimes it's even quicker than that. This is useful and interesting because this is what lets us do two things. Firstly, we can turn off inconclusive tests quicker. So if you're running experiments, you're going to find that some of them just go sideways, like the inconclusive test. The frustrating flat line, probably a widening confidence interval, and you're like, damn it, it's going nowhere. You want to end those ones sooner. Knowing that they've been recrawled allows you to have the confidence to say, if there was an effect here, we'd be seeing it by now. And so you can turn off those tests quicker. The second one is that we can shorten what we call the cooldown window. So haven't talked about this very much before, I think, but it's an important part of a testing program, is that you run your test. If it wins, you roll it out to 100% of pages. If it loses, you turn it off. Standard. The cooldown period is how long do you want to wait after that point before you run the next test on those same set of pages. We call that the cooldown. This is Google chilling, right? Everything settling back to where it should be. And we were waiting longer than we needed to because now we can be confident that that's been recrawled since the test was ended. So we can say, okay, Google's chill now. We can run our next test. Both of these things help us increase that KPI that I mentioned of test cadence. So that is it's a fairly short talk today. We've got basically two lessons. That's the first one, is the big benefit we found so far of googlebot data in a testing and experimentation program is in increasing the cadence, increasing the speed and frequency with which you can run those tests. That's lesson one. Now we're going to move into Search Console. How do we feel about Search Console? That's good. Just give me some expressions. There's some thumbs up down the front, some people in the back not liking it. Mixed, I think it's probably fair to say. So I've shown you a couple of these charts. This tells us that we have a winner, but it doesn't tell us why. It doesn't tell us, there's no story. Okay, we made a change and things got better with some statistical confidence, but we don't have a story we can tell. And stories are important. Humans consume stories, so we'd like to be able to explain this. Now, there are only 3 possible SEO hypotheses for why a test could be a winner. New keywords. Okay, we ranked for some stuff that we didn't used to rank for. We rank better for things we did used to rank for. Or we've changed something about the way we appear in the search results that means we get a better click-through rate. Those are the only ways that you can do better. Everything else, not an SEO hypothesis. Search Console is useful because it gives us metrics around 2 of these, right? We get ranking data and we get click-through rate data. I see a couple of folks trying to take photos. The slides are on Speaker Deck, and I'll tweet out the link afterwards as well. So we're looking at ranking data and we're looking at click-through rate data. We have these 2 metrics, relative rank change and relative click-through rate change. And what we're trying to do here is explain why something was a winner. So we've got a lot of green here. What we're seeing is rankings improved. In other words, the number went down, right? Moving from position 3 to position 1 is a good thing. Click-through rate went up. A bit easier to see this visually. So in the control group, basically no change. This is rank data, but you can see a similar thing in the click-through rate. Basically no change. This is before intervention and after intervention. In the variant page, this is before intervention and after intervention. Remember, going down is a good thing because it means we're getting closer to the top of the page. And you can see the same thing in table form. This is probably too small to read. It's in the slides. I'll tweet out the link, as I said. Fine, good, lovely, useful, somewhat. There's some problems. And this is unlike the Googlebot bit, which was mainly about a nice thing we discovered, the Search Console bit is a bit more challenges that we've been encountering. The first one is sampling. Sampling in Search Console could be really bad, and it'd be really nice if Google would not do that. We have a similar approach. I showed you, I said percentage of sessions crawled. We have a similar metric of data coverage for the Search Console concept. So what percentage of our organic traffic is landing on pages that show up in Search Console? You would hope that would be 100, right? Search Console, you would hope, is showing you all of your organic data. It can be catastrophically low. So step one, if you're using Search Console data, is check your data coverage. Check what percentage of traffic is landing on pages that are, in fact, showing up in the Search Console data if you're going to analyze it. That's fine, fairly well known. The other two are more fundamental. Averaging averages. You can't average averages. You can't average averages. It doesn't work. If I ride 10 miles, ride my bike 10 miles at 10 miles an hour and 10 miles at 20 miles an hour, what's my average speed? Quickly. It's not 15 miles an hour. It's about 13 point something miles an hour. Because even though I spent half the distance at 10 miles an hour and half the distance at 20 miles an hour, I spent longer riding at 10 miles an hour than I did at 20 miles an hour. Nobody's paid, nobody understands. There's a lot of blank faces. You can't average averages. And the problem here is click-through rate is an average. So if I said to you, I can magically give you some new rankings, but they're going to be below the average rank of all of your existing rankings, but they're new ones. Like, would you take that? Yeah, right? Your average rank right now is, say, 5. I can give you a whole load of position 9 rankings that are totally new keywords. Would you take that? I think you would. But that would make your click-through rate worse. So your click-through rate goes the wrong direction, even though the metric you really care about has gone in the right direction. So that's one of those problems. It relates to a deeper problem about new rankings, which is a lot of new rankings and lost rankings happen way down in the lower reaches, right? If you dig through your Search Console data, it's showing you a lot of rankings in position 80 that like 5 humans have ever seen. And winning and losing those rankings can have a disproportionate effect on your average rank position while making not a blind bit of difference to the business metrics. And so for all of these reasons, the big lesson that comes out of the Search Console data is that better for explanatory power than for statistical work. So I'm going to just summarize those two bits. So Googlebot, the main benefit of Googlebot data that we have found so far for SEO tests is the ability to run more tests faster. The main benefit we found for Search Console data is explanatory power, to explain a result that we've already detected in the traffic. And the crucial second lesson is Search Console is not good for declaring winners. Or at least click-through rate and ranking data is not good for declaring winners for those 3 reasons. Sampled, averaging averages, and the problem of new and lost rankings. You can get around some of these bits and pieces if you weight things by traffic, but you end up just getting back to the number you first thought of, which is the traffic data, which is where I started. That's the slides. I've got a little moment left for a sneak preview of some stuff that isn't really ready to have in polished form just yet, certainly not built into the product just yet. But we've been experimenting with Googlebot's ability to execute JavaScript. And I think Google has made a massive mistake by telling everybody that they can execute JavaScript. Not because they can or can't, but because it's super expensive. Did anybody see Gary talking about having an objective of reducing crawl costs, reducing Google's crawl costs this year? Maybe that's because LLMs are expensive. Maybe. My theory is that's because JavaScript's expensive. And they're trying to render the entire web, every crawl. What I think they should have done is more like with Mobilegeddon and HTTPS. They should have told us all it was a ranking factor. They should have said, please don't inject content with JavaScript. Please put it in the HTML. because it's cheaper for us. I mean, because you'll rank better. They didn't do that. They've made the mistake. They've made this bed, now they have to lie in it, which is they're essentially having to re-render the web on every crawl. My sneak preview of stuff that you might be interested that we've got coming soon is there are some problems with that. That's not news. You've heard that before. But they're also very selectively executing bits of JavaScript and not other bits of JavaScript on the same page. This is the source of problems where you see the mismatch of canonicals, titles, meta information. If you're injecting that stuff with JavaScript, they might be rendering some of your JavaScript and not other bits. So anyway, more on that to come. For now, that's me, Will Critchlow. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
DemandSphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.